USA Today has become famous, or maybe even infamous, for their yearly NFL record predictions. It's another season of the NFL, and of course, another season of controversial USA Today NFL record predictions. And not only that, but they have selected their Super Bowl matchup for this season, which I'm not sure they've ever done before. So in this video, I'm going to go division by division, team by team, breaking down USA Today's record predictions. Let you know if I agree or strongly disagree, which is most likely that one. So Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL reactions just like this, quickly becoming the best NFL reaction channel on YouTube. So let's continue, man. Get in the comments. Let me know your opinion on USA Today's record predictions. Let's see what they have. Okay. So as you guys can see, if you've seen this graphic before, if you're an NFL fan, you probably have. Each and every year, it's all over social media. Everybody is losing their mind to this graphic. And understandably so, for USA Today Sports, this is probably the biggest, most heavily eyeball-oriented piece of content that they put out all year. So there are probably some controversial predictions on purpose, right? But we're going to break that down here. So let's just begin, as we always do, from left to right, AFC to NFC. And interesting enough, they actually have the West teams on the left, the East teams on the right. So that's not typically how my mind works, but that's how we're going to flow. So starting with the Kansas City Chiefs, as not only 13-4 in the AFC and the AFC West and winning their division by 4 games, but also as the number 1 seeded team in the AFC. That's interesting because I think if the Chiefs do go on to be the number 1 seed, it's that much more difficult to beat the Chiefs and stop them from at least reaching the Super Bowl, right? But that is not going to be the case, as we'll discuss. Now, do I have a problem with 13-4 for the Chiefs? No. I think they're going to be somewhere in that range. Probably anywhere from about 11 to 15 wins. Somewhere in that range makes sense. I think their minimum is 11. Unless Mahomes gets hurt, obviously, then maybe they win like 8. But if he's healthy and the team's healthy, they should be 13-4, 14-3, 12-5, somewhere in that range, right? They have the best coach in the league, most proven track record in the league. They have one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. They have the best quarterback in the league. I think their offensive line is not as good as people give it credit for. I am currently in the process of making my offensive line rankings, and I just feel like the tackle position is extremely underwhelming. Now, the interior is awesome. Pacheco is going to see more work this year. The receiving core is putting up highlight after highlight in training camp already. Is Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown burning people down the field, which I'm not sure what that says about the secondary's progress right now, because obviously they're having to replace L'Jarius Sneed, so we'll find out in the season. I like the safety position. It's decent overall. I think the linebackers are strong and deep. The D-line is solid. I wouldn't call it great, but I think they've got a number of good players there. Mike Dana, of course, Chris Jones, obviously, and Charles Omenihu, George Karlaftis, all very solid players across the board. And I think their offense will be better this year, so I think that's going to pace them to more points. I think they're going to be near a 30-point-a-game type team. I do think their defense will decline a little bit, but that's only because they were so good last year. So I could see them being a better regular season team this year, but maybe falling a little bit short just due to fatigue in the playoffs. But 13-4 does make sense to me. 9-8 for the Chargers, I feel like is, again, I've said this many times, I think the Chargers are being a little bit overrated, and that's just because of the arrival of Jim Harbaugh. When you actually study the roster of the Chargers, they are pretty weak on the defensive line. They're pretty weak on the offensive line, on the interior offensive line. I like the tackle duo of Rashawn Slater and now Joe Alt, who is also a rookie. But the interior is definitely a little bit suspect. That's, of course, where they're going to need to be able to push people around in the run game in their new system of Greg Roman, and then obviously protect Justin Herbert from being hit and getting pressured right up the middle, because he is a primary pocket passer. Now, they're going to put more stress on the run game. More of their, I think, offense is going to be run-oriented, play-action-oriented, power-oriented. That should help the defense stay off the field. That should help them control more football games, and should allow Herbert to also get the ball down the field a little bit more. But he doesn't exactly have the weapons that exactly scare defenses or stress defenses vertically. Ladd McConkey is intriguing. I think that they could have maybe Palmer step up, or somebody, Quentin Johnston possibly, even if he's not a bust. But I just don't see where they have a lot of offensive talent to really support Herbert. That includes the offensive line, that includes the running backs, the tight ends, and the receivers. So I just think the offense overall is very overrated. Greg Roman, I'm not sure how well that's really going to match and vibe with the Justin Herbert. I don't know. Should a Justin Herbert-led offense, who's the best player by far on his offense, should he be in a run-oriented scheme? I'm not exactly sure. Defensively, again, I like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. I like Asante Samuel. The safeties are good. But the linebackers, the interior defensive line, some areas that I don't really love too much. Even the secondary depth is a little suspect. So Chargers, I just think, are too flawed to be a 9-8 type of team in this competitive a conference. I kind of see them as a 7 or 8 win team, maybe. The Raiders, I think, again, are underrated here, 6-11. Could I see them going 6-11? Obviously, I think maybe even my record prediction in March was 6-11, but I could also see them going 8-9 pretty easily. It kind of depends on what they get out of rather O'Connell or Minshew at quarterback, and I don't think either one is going to be elite or anything like that, but I think they could be better than the quarterback position last year. I think the offensive line is the unit that has the most potential that people are sleeping on. Obviously, the defensive line is getting a little bit of buzz because of Christian Wilkins and even what Kuntz was able to do near the end of the year. Obviously, Tyree Wilson in year 2, maybe being recovered from that injury. So with Max Crosby on board, that could be a potentially dynamic defensive line that could really get after quarterbacks. But the offensive line, I kind of feel like is slept on with all the talent they have there. And they could really run the ball with Zamir White. They've got multiple weapons. I think Bowers is going to be an impact player right away. Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, if he doesn't get traded. So I think the Raiders are actually a more talented team than the Chargers. I think that their defense is better. I think that their overall offensive, talent pool is better. They just have a worse quarterback. So I think the Chargers and the Raiders are very, very close because one team has a better quarterback, probably a better coach, and the other team just has more talent. So I think they're pretty close, in my opinion. So I would not have them 3 games separated there. I do agree with USA Today on the Broncos. I don't think they're a very good team. I think they're going to underwhelm a lot of these people that are Sean Payton pawns, let's call them. All these people that are Sean Payton's team's not going to win 5 games or less. That can't happen. Well, when you have Bo Nix, who was the 5th drafted quarterback in his draft class, then I don't know, man. We'll see. Also, the receiving core is underwhelming. The running back position is not explosive. The tight end is non-existent. The O-line is decent. The defense is decent, but not special. So there's a lot of underwhelming aspects to Denver. What allows the Broncos to beat teams in this league? What is their identity? That's my question. In the AFC North, I'm really, really, really kind of taken back by this. This is actually the first time I'm looking at it. Cincinnati, 11-6 as the number 4 seed. So just having the number 4 seed coming out as the division winner of the AFC North, just to me, logically makes no sense. It's the strongest division in the NFL. So therefore, the team that wins this division, I know that you think that everybody is going to beat up on each other, okay? But the winner of the AFC North is always better than 11-6 because they have to be. If they're not, this division does not live up to its expectation. So that would only be the case if everyone got injured, right? That would only be the case if Burrow were to get hurt again or Lamar were to get hurt or something happened to the Broncos roster or the Browns roster, I should say. The Bengals are going to be better than the 4th seed if they win this division. I think they'll be the 2nd or the 3rd seed, in my opinion. I think they'll win 12, 13-ish type of games. I do think they're going to win the division, so I do agree with USA Today on that point. I think that the Ravens at 10-7, I think makes sense, but I would have them above the Browns. I think they're just, and having the Ravens missing the playoffs in general is highly controversial, and I don't agree. Like, I can't agree. When you have a coach like John Harbaugh and you have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, as long as both of them are healthy and I'm not in the business of predicting injury, then I cannot have the Ravens below a team like the Browns, who have a very suspect quarterback position in Deshaun Watson. Like, do I like the Browns roster? I love the Browns roster. Head to toe, I think they've got a good offensive line, a great running back, a very good tight end, a very good receiver. They just restructured. They've got enough pieces in the receiving core. They've got an awesome defense. The defensive line's really good. The secondary has 3 top 40 corners in the league. To me, the Browns are a very good roster, but they do not have Lamar Jackson. They do not have Roquan and Kyle Hamilton on the defense with Justin Madubuike. I mean, that is one of the best trios on defense in the league, and that's not even including Marlon Humphrey in that mix, Marcus Williams in that mix, one of the best secondaries in the league, right? And the Ravens now have Derrick Henry. The Ravens have Mark Andrews back. The Ravens have Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers taking a step forward. Yes, their offensive line is beat up. Yes, or not beat up, but not as good as it was, and perhaps maybe a little underwhelming or maybe a little bit overrated, depending on your perspective. But also the defense is losing Mike McDonald, Jadeveon Clowney, some key pieces there. Obviously, Geno Stone, Patrick Queen. They're not going to be as good as last year, but they're still the Ravens after all, and they still have elite players on the defense. They're going to be in the top 10, in my opinion. So I just feel like the Ravens, they're going to be better than the Browns in most simulations. Will there be the odd simulation where the Browns maybe are better than the Ravens? Sure, it could happen, especially if Deshaun ups his level of play this year. But most likely, the Ravens are going to be better, and they're going to make the playoffs, okay? The Pittsburgh Steelers, I've said it a couple times now. I actually believe the Steelers are slept on right now. I think I made a whole video on it. I think the Steelers have the most talented roster from head to toe thoroughly. Best quarterback, best offensive coordinator, best offensive line, probably the most talented linebacking core. All of those aspects that they've had in 5 years at least. So the Steelers with Mike Tomlin, with Arthur Smith running the offense, taking pressure off Mike Tomlin, and the defense having talents like TJ Watt, Cam Hayward healthy, Alex Highsmith, Pat Queen, Minka Fitzpatrick, Porter. This team is going to be pretty good. I think they're going to run the ball. George Pickens is a good receiver. I think they've got enough on offense, and I think they're going to be an awesome defense. So I am higher on the Steelers than the USA Today prediction. I'm also probably higher on the Steelers just subtly than the Browns. I do like both teams. So Browns fans out there, I'm not giving up on your team. I just trust Mike Tomlin, and I feel good about that team this year. The Browns, I thought they, last year, they did a lot better than I think when we look at the whole totality of the season, all the injuries they had, the quarterback position and what happened there. They were able to overcome a ton. Their defense played lights out, which I don't expect to really happen at that same level. So I think both teams are going to be fighting and really, really vying for a playoff spot. But I don't know. I kind of like the Steelers' vibe a little bit more this year, just from a personal perspective. AFC South, the Colts at number 1 over the Texans is absolutely outrageous. The Colts, first of all, they don't have a quarterback that anybody knows is any good. Yes, you could watch the highlights from last year and the couple games that Anthony Richardson played and maybe have a hypothesis that he could be pretty good. And if you listed them as a wild card team, I would not blame you. But to have a team led by Anthony Richardson, who has yet to prove that he can stay healthy at the NFL level, yet to prove that he can be a dynamic passer at the NFL level, over, in my opinion, the best young quarterback in the sport, CJ Stroud, by not only 1 game, but 2, I think is absolutely insane. Shane Steichen is a great coach. I really like the Colts offensive line. They're going to be high in my rankings. I think they've got enough talent around the quarterback in terms of running back Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, a wide receiver, even Josh Downs or Mitchell to a certain standpoint. But the defense, I like the D-line. The linebackers are pretty solid. But the secondary definitely is not my favorite, and I'm not in love with Gus Bradley in the 2024 NFL landscape. I feel like there's just so much of a roller coaster ride ahead for the Colts this year in terms of quarterback play, in terms of up and down receiver play, in terms of, the year 2 of Shane Steichen, how that goes. The defense, I think, having problems against the pass. I think there's a lot to worry about with the Colts, but there is a lot of fun and a lot of potential there as well. So if you put them as a wild card, honestly, I wouldn't even blame you. But as the division winner over the Texans, who, look, they've got one of the best young play callers in the league. They've got one of the best young head coaches in the league. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league already. They have the best receiving trio in football, in my opinion. They've got a Pro Bowl caliber tight end, a Pro Bowl caliber running back, Pro Bowl caliber tackle. They've got one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. In my opinion, the best, 1-2 punch of pass rushers in the league with Hunter and Will Anderson. And they upgraded linebacker. They brought in a veteran like Danico Autry to help that pass rush out. They helped their secondary this offseason. Derek Stingley could ascend this year. There's so much to like about the Texans. I just do not understand having them going 9-8 after what they did this offseason. You would have to expect injuries to happen for that to take place. So for me, the Texans at 9-8, I just think that's outrageous. Jacksonville at 10-7 is not even a bad prediction, but I think you've kind of got to choose, in my opinion, this year. I think it's the Texans, and then you've got to choose which team you're on. Are you on the Colts or are you on Jacksonville? I'm like slightly ahead with Jacksonville over the Colts because I believe more in Trevor Lawrence than I do Anthony Richardson. I also feel like their receiving core is pretty solid. Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas. I like Travis Etienne. I like Doug Peterson. I have a lot of respect for him as a coach, and I think their defense is going to really get better thanks to Nielsen coaching it. I think their D-line's also kind of slept on. But if Jacksonville went 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, I wouldn't be shocked. Somewhere in that range makes sense. 10-7 is probably like one of the higher end outcomes, 10-7, 11-6. But again, like, choose your team. The Texans being third just makes no sense. I don't understand that at all. The Titans at 6-11 probably is pretty logical, right? They've got a rookie head coach, basically a rookie quarterback, right? I do like their receivers. The offensive line does have questions to answer, but it has a lot more talent than it's had in previous seasons. I like their running back outlook. I think the defense is probably a little bit below average, but I really like the secondary. I think the front seven is kind of where I'm a little bit worried. But the Titans will be competitive. They'll be fun. They'll be an upstart team. They'll be young. They'll be on their rise, but I don't think they're going to be competitive in terms of like playoff type seeding. So 6-11 probably makes sense. The Jets at 12-5 winning the AFC East, I think is like the highest of high outcomes, especially winning the AFC East by 2 games. Like, just consider that the Los Angeles Rams, with Stafford in the first year, they had a lot of bumps in the road. And that was with one of the best coaches in the league, Sean McVay, and so much talent. Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, etc., right? Cooper Kupp. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't even win their division in the first year with Tom Brady. So yes, this is technically the second year with Aaron Rodgers, but he has not played yet. So it's almost like the first year. So for me, I actually think if the Jets are going to be like this team that's like a Cinderella story in the playoffs, they're probably still going to be the wild card team in their division, just because I think there's going to be bumps in the road in terms of their schedule. They play a really tough schedule early. They've got a lot of primetime games on their schedule. Aaron Rodgers, is going to have to feel out the offense, the offensive coordinator, the play calling. The offensive line has to mesh. They've got a lot of new pieces, like 3 or 4 new starters this year, right? You've got to get chemistry with the receiving core. Mike Williams, will he be healthy or not? Garrett Wilson, what's his relationship with Aaron Rodgers, right? The defense, I think, is very, very good. There's no question about that, but there's also questions about Robert Saleh in terms of leadership, in terms of communication, in terms of putting these pieces together to make it happen. So I think the Jets at 12-5 is like just a controversial pick. It's just like going out there on a limb, picking a team that's going to gain a lot of like buzz and a lot of steam on Twitter, and like putting it out there just for clicks. That's kind of what I think. And not only that, but picking them to win the Super Bowl is downright like outrageous. Like, To me, it's not like impossible. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's definitely a good dark horse selection by USA Today or whomever whoever is picking. Could you see the Jets win the Super Bowl? Absolutely. Like, if Aaron Rodgers plays Aaron Rodgers football and Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams are healthy and Breece Hall's healthy and the offensive line, their pieces are still playing at the level, like Morgan Moses, Tyron Smith are still playing like they did last year, and the defense is playing like they did last year. Yes, you could see all those pieces come together and actually make a heck of a run in the playoffs. But to suggest that they're going to be the, second seed in the AFC, a clean season at 12-5, it just feels very, very, very unlikely. Very unlikely. Like 12-5, like could they, I kind of feel like they're more like an 11-6, 10-7, like they're second in their division. And then even if maybe they go on a run because their defense could carry them, they can run the ball, Aaron Rodgers doesn't turn it over. Like, could that happen? Yes. But I just think it is a lot to predict. It is a lot to predict. If you're trying to be right, it is probably not the right selection. But if you're trying to be bold, it's certainly a pick. It's certainly a selection. It certainly could happen. Okay. The Buffalo Bills as the number 5 seed at 10-7, and the Dolphins missing the playoffs. So at 8-9, I actually do kind of agree with the Dolphins selection. I would say that I actually think I'm a little bit higher on the Dolphins at maybe 9-8 than they are, but I do have them missing the playoffs. I would say that I'm concerned about Miami this year in terms of their offensive line, especially. And this team just continuously has like old players looking to join this team, which I don't know, man. It just feels like a retirement home at this point. I like Mike McDaniel, but I'm not a Tua believer, and I never have been. And I think he's probably not due necessarily. I wouldn't use that word necessarily, but I don't know, man. I feel like this team is just they're always hanging by a thread, and this schedule this year at the end of the year is just very, very, very difficult. I think that's ultimately going to derail them, but I could see them making the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. They have enough talent to do that. Buffalo, you have to believe Josh Allen's team is going to make the playoffs. I think the O-line is slept on. I think James Cook's an excellent running back. I think they'll figure out their weaponry, and Dalton Kincaid should take a step forward. I think Curtis Samuel, wide receiver, running back, doing it all, should contribute. Khalil Shakir, etc. So I think the Bills should make the playoffs. I do think they're going to win their division. I'm just ultimately not going to doubt that Sean McDermott and Josh Allen are going to figure it out. Like Aaron Rodgers, I'm not exactly sure how good he is coming off an Achilles. The last time he played in 2022, he wasn't the best quarterback in the league. He wasn't even close. He wasn't even probably a top 10 quarterback in the league. Josh Allen in any given season could be the best quarterback in the NFL. So to have him second in his division is pretty shocking and pretty illogical, in my opinion. The Patriots, once again, predicted as the worst team in the NFL. It just screams, I don't know what I'm talking about in terms of like, I don't think people understand how good the Patriots defense is. Like point blank period. I don't think people understand some of the talent that is on this defense, right? I could have put 4 people from the secondary in my top 32. I ended up putting 3, right? I had Jabril Peppers, Kyle Duggar, Christian Gonzalez, and I know that video's not yet on YouTube, but guys, this secondary could have put 4 people in my top 32 secondary players in the NFL. That's how much talent is on this team. Plus, you got Christian Barmore. Plus, you got Juwan Bentley and Tavai at linebacker, who are good players. Plus, you've got Josh Uche, who's a 10-plus sack type of guy at his best. Plus, you got Matt Judon, who was on my edge rankings. I mean, you look at this team, Keon White could take a step forward. A proven veteran like Dietrich Wise or Devon Godshaw. They have so much talent on defense. They're a top 10, top 5 defense, probably top 3 or 5 defense. And just to have them with 3 wins, it just doesn't make sense. You know, if we don't think Drake May is any good, then sure. If we think that Jacoby Brissett's starting the whole year and he's not going to be any good, sure. But I think the receiving core on paper is better. I think they've got a reliable tight end. I think they've got a good running back. I think the O-line, maybe a little shaky, but I think the new scheme that they're going to play is probably going to make them a little bit more consistent. So I kind of feel like New England is more likely to be like a 7 or 8 win team than be the worst team in the NFL. I kind of feel like they're probably going to win 5 or 6 games. That's kind of the range, 5 to 7 maybe at the best. 3 just feels like not enough. Like it just feels like You're picking the Patriots because most people don't like the Patriots because they had 20 years of a reign of terror and people are sick of them. So they don't even really think about what the team actually is. They just put them at the bottom of the list because that's the easiest one. If we put the Giants, well then, New York's going to be angry at us. If we put Carolina, oh, that's too easy. If we put, I don't know, Tennessee, like that's not sexy enough, right? Like the Patriots are that team where everybody can accept that except for Patriots fans, and we don't care about Patriots fans anyways because they've won enough, right? So New England is just that team that it feels like they're easy to put last, even though they're not even like, in my opinion, close to the worst team in the NFL. They're like a bottom 5 team, but they're definitely more talented than people are talking about. So yeah, that's my perspective on the AFC. We move to the NFC, going left to right once again. The 49ers as the number 1 seed and 13-4 is absolutely the right prediction. First of all, they've got arguably the best coach in football. They've got, I think, a young quarterback who is about to have his best season of his career. Brock Purdy was still coming back, rehabbing his elbow in the middle of last year. This guy is going to be hungry. He's more muscular. He's stronger. I think he could have a stronger arm because of it. He's going to be more mentally in tune from the mistakes he made last year. Him and Kyle going to the lab, working on what they need to work on. Could this team be a team that lost the Super Bowl and then wins the Super Bowl? That could definitely happen, right? The Chiefs, I believe, the Patriots, I think, did it. The Chiefs, did they do that? I don't think so, but they were kind of close. I think the Niners could be that team. Like I think it's very rare that you see a team that loses the Super Bowl and then they basically lose nothing. And they honestly, like, more cohesive, deeper on the offensive line, more cohesive, deeper in the secondary. Hufanga comes back. I think they're deeper at linebacker. I think they're probably going to be more consistent on the D-line. I think their defensive coaching is going to be improved. I think the Niners, like a lot of people are saying, they're going to fall off. They're going to be a team that has a Super Bowl hangover. They're deeper at receiver. Like, you really look at the roster and you say to yourself, man, like, no, this team is going to be just as good, if not better than last year. That's personally what I think about this team. Like, you may disagree. That's fine. But, man, I don't think you can really go wrong by putting the Niners as the number 1 seed. Sure, maybe they could finish as the 2nd or the 3rd seed. That could definitely happen. But they're definitely going to make the playoffs. I definitely think they're going to win their division. I don't think there's anyone that close in their division. I do agree that the Rams are 2nd, and I do agree about 10-7. I like the offensive line quite a bit. I think it's a top 10 offensive line in the league. I think Matthew Stafford is excellent still. As long as he's healthy, he'll be great. He's a top 10 quarterback. I think that they've got 2 good receivers. Puka is borderline elite. I think Kupp is slowing down, but he's still good. I love the running back in Williams, and Sean McVay is a brilliant coach, great leader. The defense, I think, could be young, but pretty interesting, right? The D-line has got some nice pieces to it. Kobe Turner, Jared Verse, but they don't have Aaron Donald, that guy that, as Sean McVay put it, the Michael Jordan of the defensive line that demands double teams on every snap. I do think that's going to hurt them. Linebacker, I think, is solid with Ernest Jones leading the way. Secondary, I do think, has been improved by the veteran additions they've made, like Darius Williams, potentially Tre'Davious White, Cameron Curl, etc. I do think that those guys will steady the secondary. So I feel like the Rams are going to be an offensive-led team that maybe has some defensive inconsistencies, but probably wins like 9 to 11 games in that range, but it's not quite as good as the Niners as one of the best teams in the NFL. The Cardinals at 7-10 and the Seahawks at 5-12 is certainly a take. Personally, I believe the Seahawks are immensely, I don't even think it's particularly close. They are better than the Cardinals. I think their new head coach, Mike Macdonald, is actually going to improve this team. I think the defense is extremely slept on. Names like Devin Witherspoon. I think names like Julian Love. I think players like the linebacker they picked up from Buffalo, who I can't really name it, Dodson. Baker being added to the mix. Rashawn Jenkins being added to the team. I think the pass rush is a lot better than people think. Murphy, right? Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, Nwosu coming back from injury. They've got a really good defense. Don't sleep on this defense. Tariq Woolen could be a better player this year. Or Reek Woolen, right? The offense, I'm worried about the O-line, but they've got so much skill, talent. I think Geno is a professional quarterback and a good leader. I think they're going to win like 9 or 10 games. So 5 for me is like insanity. Like I do not see any scenario where they only win 5 games. The Cardinals at 7 and 10, could that happen? Sure. Is that probably going to happen? With them being third in their division, I think is unlikely. I think it would only happen if the Seahawks had a crazy amount of injuries, or the Rams like lost Matthew Stafford. Like the Cardinals at 7 and 10, it could happen, but I still think they would finish last in their division. Like this could just be the best division in football. It's very possible. Now, Kyler Murray could definitely uplift a team to 7 wins with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride and the offensive line and the running back that they have. They could really be a dynamic offense, but the defense is very worrisome. Their pass rush is non-existent. Their secondary is very suspect. I just don't believe the Cardinals are there yet, personally. The NFC North, the Packers winning the division and going to the Super Bowl could happen. Now, do I think the Packers are there in terms of a 13-4 type of football team? I think that's probably a little bit too high. Now, I think the Packers, if they were to win the Super Bowl or like go to the Super Bowl or whatever, I think they're more likely to be a team that's like 11-6, and then they get hot once again at the end of the year, and they kind of like go on the road and win like they did last postseason, and they overcome the Niners or whatever, and they get hot. Kind of like Aaron Rodgers' Super Bowl title. That's kind of how I would foresee the Packers winning the Super Bowl. Jordan Love would obviously have to uptick his play. Somebody at the wide receiving position would have to really break out. Could it be Watson or Reed, potentially, maybe even Wicks. But the Packers definitely need somebody to step up there. Josh Jacobs at running back. They've got the pieces on the offense. The offensive line's very solid. The defense, I think, is the biggest piece of the pie here for this to happen, because they have a new defensive coordinator, a lot of talent on the D-line, a lot of talent on the defense, but they're relying still on a lot of young players, especially in the secondary at linebacker, to fill key roles for them. So 13-4 just seems a bit too high for a team that still has to prove that they're more consistent than they were last year. Like the first half of last year, people were panicking about Jordan Love. People were panicking about the franchise, the team, whatever. Last half of the year is kind of like diagnosed people with a Packer syndrome, where everybody thinks the Packers are going to be this dominant team. I think they're going to be a good team, potentially a very good team, but dominant, aka the same level as the Niners, is probably a little bit illogical in the regular season. This is a team that I think needs one more regular season to really get off the ground in terms of a true postseason contender. The Lions, I think, are a little bit underrated here at 11-6. But as the 5 seed, I think it's a little bit of a bold selection in not having them win their division, but I don't think it's crazy. Look, I think the Packers could win this division. Absolutely. They've got enough talent. They've got enough coaching there, especially with the defensive improvements. It could happen. But the Lions have proven, I mean, they've got the best offensive line in football. Jared Goff's a consistent, good quarterback. Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson have it rolling. I think they've got good coaching, a very underrated coaching staff overall, Aaron Glenn included. I think the D-line is improved. I think the secondary is improved. I think the Lions are more likely to be the 13-4 type of team, and maybe even the number 1 seed, than I think the Packers are. That's just my opinion. The Bears as the 7 seed, I think they're just going to be too inconsistent on both the D-line and the O-line, and Caleb Williams in general as a young rookie quarterback to be 9-8 and make the playoffs. That's just my opinion. I think it's more likely that the Vikings are close to the Bears, or like the Vikings finish ahead of the Bears, than it is that the Bears make the playoffs. That would be my bold-ish type of take. I think the Vikings have a good O-line, good receivers, defense that I think improved this offseason with excellent coaching on offense and defense. I think they've got significantly better coaching than the Bears. So I wouldn't even be shocked if the Vikings were better than the Bears this year. But the Bears do have that potential. They do have great receivers, a good tight end, a pretty good running back room, right? A defense that finished the season very strong last year, led by Jalen Johnson. I think the Bears could be a good team. I think they're going to be too inconsistent to make the playoffs. So that's kind of my view on the NFC North. The NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons as the number 1 team in the NFC South is not crazy as the number 4 seed, right? That's not crazy whatsoever, but I do feel like it takes a little bit of a leap of faith. It takes a little bit of a leap of faith to believe in their pass rush. It takes a little bit of a leap of faith to believe in Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles. It takes a little bit of a leap of faith to believe in their corner position. It takes a little bit of a leap of faith to believe that this team is going to supplant the Bucs and overcome the Saints. So for me, yeah, I could see this happening. I think their coaching on paper is pretty fun and interesting. Bijan with this offensive line, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Darnell Mooney. They've got the pieces on offense to really click and make this a top 10, borderline top 10 offense with the Rams system coming to town. I could also see the defense, being respectable, maybe not good, but respectable enough to make them an 8, 9, 10 type win team. I could see the winner of this division only winning 8 games. That certainly could take place. I also agree that they're going to be the number 4 seed if they win the division. I have the Bucs as still the team in the NFC South because I think they improved the offensive line. I believe in Baker and Bowles as a tandem of Baker leading the offense, Bowles leading the defense. I think their D-line is pretty good, and I could see really Cansey and Vea having dominant games. I think that the secondary is solid. I like that they added Whitehead back to Winfield. I think that's going to be a very good safety combo this year. I think Evans and Godwin are still playing at a high level, and they've got a plethora of kind of underrated names to help them move the football, whether it be Cade Otton or the receivers behind the top 2, or, Rashad White as a receiving option. So I think the Bucs are just the most reliable, consistent team in this division that I would probably pick to win the division, although Atlanta certainly could win it based on the talent they have, the new coaching they have. That could definitely happen. The Saints, I'm a little bit lower on than at 8 and 9, and certainly as the second team. I kind of have it as Bucs, Falcons, a kind of a gap, then the Saints. I could even see the Panthers being better than the Saints. It depends on the Saints' offensive line because the Saints' offensive line is in shambles. Like, without Ryan Ramczyk, they're in a lot of trouble. And Derek Carr, without protection, is not a good quarterback. He's a disaster, right? Alvin Kamara has slowed down. They've only really got Chris Olave to throw to. Rashid Shaheed is a little bit inconsistent. The defense is good. Don't get me wrong. It's very solid, but they're not like an overwhelming unit. So I could see the Panthers being right there with the Saints. But my only problem with the Panthers, right? I like what they did on the offensive line. I like what they did at receiver. I think the defense is probably not great. It's probably below, average. It's probably one of the worst units on paper, but it's not terrible, right? Like, it certainly could be respectable. I think Bryce Young is just my problem. Like, I can't believe in Bryce Young. So the Saints are the number 3 team for me because I just believe Derek Carr is a little bit better. I think their defense a little bit better than Carolina. So that's kind of where I have the Saints ahead of the Panthers. But if the Panthers finish ahead of the Saints, I don't think that'd be outrageous. So I'm just off base with, the Saints and the Panthers. I do think the Falcons could win the division. The Bucs and the Falcons, I think, are kind of interchangeable in my opinion. Then you got the NFC West. The Eagles only at 10 and 7, I think is pretty low. Like, the Eagles have too much talent, I feel like, to not win at least 11 games. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. The O-line is still elite. They've got Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, weapons galore there. Saquon's a man proven on a mission here. And the defense, I think, should be more respectable in terms of their scheme, their detail, the coaching, the teaching. It will be better from Vic Fangio's standpoint. I think it will take some time on offense to learn the Kellen Moore approach, but I do think they're going to be better for it near the end of the year. Nick Sirianni, as long as he can keep his ego in check, should be fine. So the Eagles, they just have too much talent, I think, to not win like 11 or 12 games. I think they're going to feast on a rather weak schedule, but I don't think they're actually going to be a legitimate Super Bowl threat. I think the 3 teams that are legitimate Super Bowl threats in this conference are San Francisco, Green Bay, and Detroit. I think the Eagles are a step below that, although they could join that group along with Los Angeles. That's kind of what I think. The Cowboys are 8 and 9, and that's fair, although I think that might be a little bit too low based on the schedule they have, the quarterback, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons. They still got a lot of elite players. Trayvon Diggs being one of those players. Deron Bland capable of being one of those players, right? DeMarcus Lawrence. They've still got so much talent. Zach Martin's elite. Tyler Smith is elite. They've got dudes on this team, so that could carry this team to a winning record, just period. Even if their coaching is a little bit undesirable, even if Dak takes a step back this year, even if the O-line is a little bit more shaky this year, even if they have Zeke at running back, they just have enough studs to overcome a lot of bad things. Like Dak and CD can carry an offense. We saw that last year. Micah can carry a defense. Trayvon and Bland is excellent, right? The safeties are good enough. The linebackers are concerning. Diggy Zua's a good player, though. They've got good players still, enough to win 9-ish games and maybe make the playoffs. The Commanders at 7 and 10, I think is too high. I think the Commanders roster is still pretty pathetic. I think that the safeties and the corners and the secondary in general is pretty bad. The safeties are okay. I could see, where they maybe have potential. Like Jeremy Chin was a nice addition. I think the corners, definitely they need to get more out of the first round pick from a year ago. Linebackers are good. D-line interior is good, but edges are pretty underwhelming. The offensive line is still pretty bad. Jaden Daniels, I think, is going to struggle as a rookie. And overall, the offense, I just don't think has a lot of talent. Like, people like Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler. I'm not, the biggest fan of either one. I think Robinson is fine, but Eckler is just washed. The receiving core, Jahan Dotson needs to prove he's better than his draft status, and Terry McLaurin had his worst year of his career last year. So, the Commanders are, I think, a 4 or 5 win team, personally. I think they need another year to build this roster and this team and this culture. The Giants at 4-13 is perfectly fine for me. Daniel Jones could be a bit of a roller coaster and a bit of a PR disaster this year. The O-line is still pretty bad, although they might be a little bit better. The running back obviously has declined. The tight end has declined. The wide receiving core could be more explosive thanks to Malik Neighbors, but I don't like the rest of the pieces really overall. Darius Slayton is fine. The defense, I love the defensive line, but I think the back end of the defense, even to a certain degree, linebacker outside of Okereke is pretty mid to bad. I do like Banks, but that's about it. Right? Losing McKinney is going to be a huge loss for them. Losing Adoree Jackson, I think, is a big loss for them unless he comes back. So 4-13 makes sense. I don't think they've got a good offense. I don't think they've got a good defense. I don't really think they have a unit they can rely on there. So that's kind of my take on the USA Today predictions. You guys let me know in the comments what you think. It's Mitch of The Bottom Line View. It's once again been another NFL reaction video. Peace, guys.